We are introduced to a young man named Bong at the beginning of the film. As the youngest chef at Blue House, the Prime Minister of South Korea's official house, Bong has a very gifted palate for food. The house is hosting a dinner party for a Chinese ambassador that evening, Bong discovers. Bong is told to make a delectable fish dish without any bones because the ambassador has severe fishbone sensitivity. They tell Bong to start making the dish right away, and he does so. As soon as it gets dark, the ambassador is given his dinner. Sadly, as soon as the envoy bites into the fish, he discovers a hook inside of it. Bong is now in a difficult situation as multiple guards look throughout the estate for him. The next scene shows two policemen looking into the incident approaching Bong's flat and knocking on his door. While the officers work diligently to apprehend him, Bong attempts to flee from the balcony after realizing that he is in trouble. Unfortunately, Bong falls into the swimming pool below during the process and hits his head on the water's surface. He keeps falling while a woman swims near him and kisses him on the lips for no apparent reason. A weird bed and even stranger surroundings greet Bong as he awakens. Bong goes to a nearby mirror as soon as he senses anything is off. Bong is shocked to see himself in the mirror and realizes he has transformed into a lady. After giving it some thought, he decides that, given the fall, he must be dreaming. To investigate what is happening, Bong quietly leaves the room. However, she is greeted by dozens of women who bow and address her as Your Highness. Bong is taken aback by this and rushes outside the structure, but she immediately feels cold in her crotch. At this point, Bong realizes she has misplaced her banana. This horrifies Bong, who at first thinks she has been trafficked into a sex exchange scheme. However, Bong realizes she has time traveled to the past after observing his surroundings. She collapses in astonishment at the realization and is finally taken back to the palace. The following morning, when Bong awakens, a maid tells her who she is now. She traveled back in time to 1851, during the Joseon dynasty. She also currently resides inside Kim So-young, a royal ward, which is her body. The situation is made worse when Bong learns that Kim will soon wed the king and become the queen. The maid adds that after an unidentified accident, her body was discovered floating on the lake. Fortunately, the guards discovered her and returned her to the palace. When Bong hears this, he surmises that the lake holds the key to going home because both his and Kim's spirits must have switched. To leap into the lake and return to the present, Bong requests the maid's assistance in getting there. Sadly, her intention to jump backfires as she lands on the muddy ground. It turns out that to prevent anyone from slipping into the lake again, the Grand Queen instructed the palace staff to drain it overnight. Even though the news depresses Bong, he still believes that water would solve the problem. She therefore frantically seeks to immerse herself in whatever body of water she can locate. She even goes so far as to stick her head inside a water-filled bucket used to mop the floors. All of her efforts, nevertheless, were in vain. The wedding day comes a few days later. Even though Bong is unfamiliar with the dynasty's traditions, she manages to fulfill the necessary wedding rites with the aid of her handmaids. Bong, who is now the queen, is invited to spend the night in the king's apartments. The idea repulses Bong, who offers the king some drink in the hopes that he will pass out. Fortunately, much to Bong's relief, the king falls asleep. The next day, Bong has a hangover when he awakes and is given some food. She informs the royal chef to prepare ramen in its place because she is repulsed by the mushy dish. Despite being baffled by the word, the chef attempts to prepare a foreign dish per Bong's instructions. The chef makes several attempts to prepare the dish, but Bong rejects each one. The succeeding dishes are too bland and hot, while the first dish is too healthy. The chef eventually loses patience and orders Bong to prepare it on her own after becoming irritated. As she recalls her cooking skills, Bong chooses to make the dish. As soon as Bong walks inside the royal kitchen, he grabs a knife. The queen has not attempted to cook since she was a child, which alarms her maid. As a result, the maid and the other staff members anticipate her causing a mess in the kitchen. To the surprise of the staff, Bong begins swiftly and precisely chopping the vegetables. Everything is precisely and properly sized and cut by her, creating a cuisine that is great in the end. Together with her right-hand maid, Bong eats the ramen in her chambers. The chef suggests that the food simply looks fine but doesn't taste well because he is jealous of Bong's cooking skills and is back in the kitchen. The royal chef uses the remains still in the pot to put his theory to the test. But after taking a bite, he is shocked by how delicious it is and even drops his spoon in disbelief. Following the dramatic encounter, Bong has an idea at once. The new queen understands that her talent in the kitchen will help her win over the royal family. The lake was dried up by the Grand Queen. Therefore, she could consent to refill the lake if Bong can appease her with some food. As soon as Bong gets back to the kitchen, the royal chef exerts his dominance and forbids her from looking at the meal that was made for the Grand Queen. This infuriates Bong, who dares him to a speed cooking competition. Initially reluctant to engage in combat, the royal chef eventually agrees to the challenge after Bong teases him. The competition starts when a bell is rung by a servant. The executive chef slashes a bunch of carrots with his knife. The queen's hands, on the other hand, move more quickly and can cut some cucumbers with ease. The first person to ring the bell when Bong's food is finished cooking is her, winning the competition. This infuriates the royal chef, who contends that while speed is vital, the flavor is the true barometer of a chef's ability. Bong nods in agreement with confidence and asks the royal cuisine inspector to test both dishes to determine which is superior. Bong takes over the royal kitchen after the inspector states that Bong's food is superior and is enthralled by it. Bong investigates the Grand Queen's cuisine while making use of her newly obtained rank. Due to her recent toothache, Bong learns from the Grand Queen's food preferences that she is a finicky eater. As a result, Bong chooses to prepare the aristocrat a supper with a delicate texture. Making potato porridge is the first thing Bong starts working on. She starts by adding the correct components after adding some milk to the pot and sometimes tasting the resulting concoction. Finally, the potatoes are put in the pot. The dinner is then served with a few floral garnishes for display purposes. The finished piece meets Bong's approval, and she gives it to the Grand Queen. The Queen praises the food but notes that it could have been better because it was delivered cold. The excellent mashed potatoes lumped as a result of the temperature fluctuation, thereby slightly changing the flavor. The presentation was also impacted by the porridge spilling down the plate sides. Hearing this saddens Bong, who then reluctantly sets off to return to the palace. Bong thinks of a different way to feed the Grand Queen while riding in her chariot. Soon after that, she had a brilliant idea. Bong makes a piece of clothing and has her maid give it to the royal engineers along with some instructions. The engineers build a customized food delivery wagon that is properly insulated on all sides by cloth, as instructed by Bong. In the meantime, Bong cooks a variety of delectable meals and orders the slaves to bring them while using the newly created cabinet. The Grand Queen accepts the hot food and devours it completely. When the idea is eventually proven to be successful, the engineers go back to Bong and tell him the good news. A few days later, the king hosts a huge feast and invites representatives from across the nation. Unfortunately, on the day of the meal, the cooks fall ill, leaving the royal kitchen understaffed. When Bong sees this, he resolves to assist. She enters the kitchen covertly after leaving the reception. Since the groceries that were supposed to be delivered that day were unable to do so, Bong finds that the cupboard is running low on ingredients. Due to his limited resources, Bong is forced to think outside the box. The queen makes a straightforward yet distinctive potato dish with the aid of her ladies. To make the potato crisp and crunchy, Bong peels wrap it around a stick and deep-fried it. When the first dish is served, the guests are first disappointed because they were expecting something more elegant for a royal banquet. However, as soon as they consume the novel food, they are amazed by its flavor and their eyes beam with appreciation. Because there is no meat in the kitchen, Bong's second dish requires a little more work. She makes a vegetable burger with tomato relish on the side by inventively using beans. Bong is satisfied with her creation and gives it the moniker, McDonald, taking inspiration from the current McDonald's. As the visitors enjoy the delectable fare, the meal is a big hit, much like the potato serving. Bong makes a traditional jelly dessert with a modern touch for the meal's last course. She labels the jelly sticks, fortune jelly, and adds special notes on them since you get to read your fortune after you finish the dessert. The visitors take pleasure in reading their fortunes while they eat the traditional jelly. Despite the early setbacks, Bong's cooking makes the banquet a huge success. After being impressed by Bong's abilities and learning that the Grand Queen was also present at the event, she finally requests it. Bong requests that the lake be filled right away. The Grand Queen grants her request and gives the order for the servants to begin their work. Unfortunately, because it is the 19th century, there are no sophisticated machines to help with this task. Therefore, the servants are limited to carrying water by hand in wooden buckets. The servants have a far way to travel from the town's well to the lake, thus the operation is incredibly slow. This irritates Bong, who immediately thinks of a new strategy. She directs each servant to remain in place while just passing the bucket from one to the other. The technique is well liked by the populace because it expedites and simplifies work. While Bong manages the drawn-out procedure, they all continue working diligently on the task. The water doesn't fill up despite several days passing. Bong quickly grows impatient and desperate. Fortunately, a significant downpour starts, slowly but steadily watering the lake. Bong dances ecstatically in the rain as he is exuberant by the weather change. After the lake is full, a few hours later Bong goes to the shore and inscribes her name on a cornerstone. She then follows suit with the movie's opening scene by diving into the lake and submerging. When Bong finally wakes up, he is shocked to discover that he is in a hospital and that a cop is dozing off just a few feet from where he is lying. He stealthily tries to escape, but the officer awakens, and a quick pursuit begins. Although Bong manages to escape from him, two other officers arrive and surround him. In a desperate attempt to escape the attackers, Bong leaps from a high platform. He then runs down the street. He goes straight away to a public library to look for a history book. He smiles as he sees a book about the Joseon dynasty there and realizes that he is now a part of history. His walk down memory lane abruptly ends, though, as the pursuing officers show up at the library. The officers explain that they are not there to arrest Bong when he tries to flee once more. It turns out that his time travel to the Joseon era has altered the present. He isn't being pursued by the police right now. Instead, they are coming to defend him since Bong has come forth as a corruption whistleblower and exposed a senior official. To verify their statements, Bong quickly runs to a nearby computer and checks the internet. He quickly realizes that they are telling the truth because both history and the modern world have altered. The film concludes with Bong standing on a street and conveying a message of hope about how even a minor alteration in the past may have a significant impact on the present.